Do you have a favorite professional wrestler?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, it depends on what era you're talking about. I mean, I had favorites when I was growing up. I had favorites when I kind of got back into it.
All right, like how about when you were growing
I
up?
when I was growing up, I mean, my favorite honestly was Rowdy Roddy.
Nice.
You know, nobody was better than Rowdy Roddy Piper. You know, and then when I got back into it, it was Stone Cold. You know, like he was just there was just something about him that he was just one of my favorites.
Absolutely, same here. And like I'm always curious, how did you get into wrestling? Do you remember like what your earliest memory of professional wrestling was?
My first early memories of watching wrestling was watching wrestling on TBS. So it was N.W.A.
Nice.
Watching. It was oh god, I can't remember what time it was on, but I remember it was on at. It was always like 7:05.
6:05.
You know, like that was a big TBS thing. It was like 05. I was like, wow, why can't it just be 7 o'clock? Why is it got to be 7:05? You know.
Yeah.
But I remember watching Ric Flair and the Horsemen and just Magnum TA. Like so that was one of my first memories of really getting into wrestling. And then coming over and on USA every Saturday you would watch All American Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I really kind of got into WWE.
That's awesome, and that's a pretty great era of N.W.A. I feel to get into. Were you a guy who rooted for the Horsemen, or did you root for like Dusty and Magnum TA?
Oh, I mean, I loved Dusty and Magnum, but honestly, at that young age, I knew that there was something so cool about the Horsemen.
Yeah.
Like even because it was almost like watching superheroes go at it. It's like even you knew that you should be rooting for Dusty and Magnum and the Midnight Express or the Rock and Roll Express, excuse me. Even though you knew you should be rooting for them, you kind of rooted for the Horsemen. Just some of the best dudes working at the time. And just so much charisma, and you loved to hate them.
Yeah.
Like so. Even as a kid, I just knew that it was just something that I just loved.
That's awesome. And then on the WWF at the time side, were you a Hulk Hogan fan? Were you rooting for Hulk?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of had to be. He was like the ultimate hero.
Mm-hmm.
I was always very much attracted to the dudes with the attitude. Like even when. Even afterward, when I was getting a little older and I was still kind of watching, I still loved dudes like the Ultimate Warrior, but I got more into people like Shawn Michaels, and
same here.
And I mean, I was a huge Rockers fan to begin with, but when him and Jannetty split up, I really was a bigger fan of Michaels just because I just loved the attitude, like. Screw you! I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. I still think the ladder match that he and Scott Hall had, the kind of the first one ever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's still one of the greatest matches of all time.
Agreed. Yeah, and it still holds up. I was watching it on the WWE Network.
Absolutely, it really does.
Yeah.
And
it was so ahead of its time.
That you're dealing with somebody who transcends the normal kind of storylines. This is a dude who can work with anyone and just make it fucking pop. And they both could, Yeah. I mean, Scott Hall was no slouch either.
What you said about the Horseman, I'm a little younger than you. That's kind of how I felt about Shawn Michaels at the time, where he was a bad guy. He was with Sherry, and you were supposed to not like him, but there was just something about him that I thought was so cool, and the fact that he was such an awesome wrestler and always delivered in the ring, it really drew me to him. Shawn Michaels was one of my favorites. But then you said that you got out of what made you get out of wrestling? I'm assuming it was like in the early 90s.
I mean, the main reason was because honestly, I was concentrating more on music than kind of sticking around and watching shows. What got me back in was the Monday Night Wars. Ironically, I think a lot of people could say that. was my roommate at the time. I was still a huge wrestling fan. Was at work or doing gigs. He was like, "Dude, you got it. We got to do Nitro and Raw and flip back and forth." And I had really no idea what he was talking about. So we would flip literally back and forth between Nitro and Raw just to see if we could catch, the best matches. And slowly but surely, Raw really started to win it out because it just got to the point where the N.W.A was just going to come out. You knew they were going to come out and ruin everything. Yeah, and it just got boring. It's like it just got to the point where it's like you got 47 dudes in the ring. You only care about 3 of them. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So Raw ultimately kind of won out, and that's really what got me back in, especially rooting for Stone Cold.
Agreed. Yeah, I feel like the problem with WCW at the time was, like you were saying, it would always just end with NWO running in, and there was no storyline progress. It was the same storyline over and over. It moved so much slowly, whereas I feel with Raw, every week you learn something new about every storyline, and there wasn't just a storyline on top. Like the mid-card guys got really cool stories. There were interesting characters. It was just a better overall package.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people talked about the storylines on WCW, but the storylines for Raw were just as good, but they had the matches to back it up.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree with that. The quality and the roster was just so much better. And then once they started really kind of pulling all the people from WCW, like Jericho, the Eddies, all those guys, Dean Malenko, when they started coming over, that's when it was just like, here we go. This is what it's all about, They could spot the talent. They could see the people who really wanted to work. And that's when it started to pop.
Yeah, they really do it right. I was curious, who do you think is, like, character-wise, not like real-life personality-wise, who is, like, the most metal character in pro wrestling history?
Oh, the most metal? Oh, I mean, you got to start with the Legion of Doom, man. I mean, you got to talk about the Road Warriors, I mean, they were probably, to me, the first heavy metal really the first heavy metal tag team.
Yeah, and they came out to Iron Man.
But then absolutely. Awesome. But then you had people like Kevin Sullivan, who was like the satanic wrestler. Dealt with witchcraft and was just a naturally bad guy, which I was so into at the time. I was just like, this is so cool. But then you had teams like Demolition. That had a really kind of a full-on heavy metal theme song when they came out. So I think there's just been a lot over the years that that have been really great heavy metal wrestlers, and then obviously didn't really come out to heavy metal at first, but the Undertaker it was like the king daddy of all. I mean, if you want to talk about metal, it doesn't get much more that. And then obviously after that, Kane and Mankind really kind of tying it together.
Yeah. And you got involved in some pro wrestling recently. You were at an NXT show at one of those Danny Wilmer festivals. I believe it was at Aftershock Fest. And I was lucky enough to be able to work with some of the NXT guys, which was fucking rad, man. I mean, just so cool for me. As a fan, I mean, the whole time you're trying not to go kayfabe and then blow it, but it was kind of rad, just kind of, working with those guys. Yeah. And so like, that's so fun. You're, I'm going to say it, you're a huge rock star, and yet here you are humbled by these wrestlers because you just don't want to look like a dork because you're such a wrestling fan. I'm assuming based on what you're saying. So I thought,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I thought that it looked great, and it was a super awesome thing that you did with Baron Corbin. Where he was kind of getting in your face, and you gave him a pretty hearty slap, and it didn't look like you pulled your slap at all.
Yeah, he. The funny thing is, we were backstage and we were talking about it. He's like, and I was like, "How hard do you want me to hit you?" And he goes, "You know what? As long as you don't hit my ear, you hit me as hard as you can." He's like, "We'll sell the hell out of it." And I was like, "All right, man, here we go." And me and Corbin have known each other for a really long time. To be able to do something with a good buddy of mine was just so fucking rad.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Do you follow NXT? I mean, you're a busy guy. I can only imagine you have so much time in the day.
I try to watch or go to the shows as much as possible. Like, I was just at Money in the Bank with my niece and my cousin, and it was a fucking great pay-per-view, man. Like, it was really awesome. Fun. I loved seeing Ambrose cash in and get the belt. Like, I was so happy to see that go down. That it was pretty fucking rad, man.
Yeah, and I feel like even that ladder match was one of the better Money in the Bank ladder matches. Like, at this point, man. At this point, you're like, what can there be done?
And look at who was involved. They had so many great workers. All like some of the best dudes from NXT, and then some of the best dudes from WWE, all coming together to make a great fucking ladder match. I thought it was killer.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it was an awesome show. That must have been a really fun show to watch live. Who are some of the guys right now that you're like kind of rooting for that you think could be like a big star in a few years?
Oh man, there is so much talent there, right?
Yeah, I think the roster is incredible now.
Yeah, I think this is the strongest their roster has been in a very, very long time. And you credit where it's due. I think it all comes up to the NXT come and really not only making their presence felt, but also taking the game to the next level, taking it back up a notch. Because a lot of the older dudes, they always wrestle kind of stiff. I mean, I know some of them have taken some serious bumps over the years, but they keep it kind of close, keep it kind of safe. Whereas you would with the NXT guys, you never know what kind of match you're going to get, which I think is really refreshing. And that's kind of what you see when you see a wrestling match. You don't want to see the same fucking bullshit moves over and over again. You just want to see something really, really cool. And that's where the NXT guys are really pushing the boundaries and working with some of the best guys in the WWE to make it work. Now that Enzo and the big guy are up there, man, it's going to be a whole new thing.
Yeah, those guys are great. And I love how when they came in, Enzo and Cass, like immediately people already knew the catchphrases. They were singing along, and like it's just going up from there. And now
it's old school, right? It's that cool vibe. Like, you can't wait to see what happens. It's so rad.
Yeah, that's cool. And like you just had a neck injury, like a pretty serious neck injury, and it kind of reminded me of some of the neck injuries in pro wrestling with like the one that Austin had or like how Edge had, but you were just back, a few weeks later. Like, I feel the, going up on stage for an hour and jumping up and down. I mean, it's pretty comparable to taking bumps in the ring, wouldn't you say? Like there's some sort of correlation there.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's I mean, in comparison, you just kind of take a look at what you can and can't do, and you just kind of go with it. Right now, it's only been 6 weeks since I had the surgery, so I'm very kind of limited in what I can and can't do. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the show must go on. So it's kind of been refreshing for me because I've had to find different ways to put the show on. And different ways to entertain and different ways to really get the audience going. And that to me is I'd rather have that challenge than to sit back and go, oh, well, it was me, I can't do anything. I'm just lucky that when I did, the doctors told me that it was very, very serious. So I don't really worry about the limitations or anything. I just know that every day is different. Every day I'm getting a little better, and every day I get to go out and do what I love. So I try not to worry about anything too much as long as I know that I'm taking care of myself.
Right on. I mean, it's great to hear that you're feeling better every day, and it's cool that you're finding new ways to pump up the crowd. I feel that's that's basically entertainment. As long as the crowd is reacting, you're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. And and honestly, just watching the reaction from the fans, it's like, they're like, you know what? You couldn't even tell. You gave everything you had, and it was one of the shows I've ever seen. And that to me, that is so gratifying, man. It makes me feel really good about what I do.
That's awesome. Would you say, like, this might be a bit of a reach, but would you say, like, there are any wrestlers that kind of inspire your showmanship or the way you behave on stage?
A little bit, a lot, because, I don't want to say that I'm playing a character, but you got to have that bravado, man. You're larger than life. Like, all the wrestlers that I looked up to and loved were all larger than life, whether it was, the embodiment of the American spirit like Hulk Hogan, or the absolute spirit of a badass like Stone Cold Steve Austin, just the ultimate badass. Didn't give a shit if he was a good guy or a bad guy. He was just going to come out and get it on. That to me, that's what it was all about. Was just that just kind of giving in to that person inside that's begging to come out and entertain. And I think that's where I took my inspiration from, is just just finding that energy inside you to put into that personality so you can fill your room with it and make people go, holy shit, I'm seeing something really, really good.
That's awesome. All right, well, we're kind of winding down on our time here, so I want to know, do you have any like favorite matches that you hold dear to your heart that you'll always remember and go back to, maybe?
Oh man, there's so many that I could mention. I mean, anytime The Rock and Stone Cold went at each other, it was amazing. I think my favorite match of all time though had to be the WWE versus the Alliance match.
Oh, okay.
That was 2001 or 2002.
I believe it was Survivor Series 2001, if that's what it, like the one where it was for control of the company, right?
Yep, it was Team WCW, which was Stone Cold and everybody.
Yeah. And
then Team WWE, which was The Rock, Jericho, Kane and The Undertaker, Big Show. Yeah, to me, that was probably one of my favorite matches of all time. To me, that's up there with the match that Michaels had with Bret Hart, the Iron Man match, which is also one of my favorites.
Oh.
It's hard. I mean, it's hard. I'd be hard pressed to pick a favorite one, but I think that one, just because so many great people like Booker T, I mean, there were so many great wrestlers in that ring that it was just fucking amazing.
Yeah, that whole era, like that 2001, like right after WCW kind of went down, like, and WWE kind of like had their pick of like the best talent. It was such a fun time, I feel. And even the next night when Ric Flair came back to become like the half owner somehow.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then Stone Cold coming down and making the switch back to face.
Yeah,
it was just like, here we go. This is awesome.
Yeah, that was a really really fun time.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
All right, Corey. You know what? I will. I don't want to keep you any longer than you can go. I want to let you go. One final question, and this is not wrestling related, but do you prefer corn or flour tortilla?
Ooh, flour.
Why do you say
flour
flour?
Tortillas? Nothing against corn. It depends on what I'm making. Flour, I'm so used to working with flour tortillas that I can really kind of make them into anything. I can make tacos, I can do burritos, I can do enchiladas, I can do that because I do a lot of the cooking in my house. So I tend to work with flour because they're a little more malleable. They don't break up as much as corn tortillas do.
Makes perfect sense. Corey, thank you so much for giving us some of your time to talk.
No worries.
Giving us some of your time to talk.
No worries.
Giving us some of your time to talk.
No